My wife abandoned our kids and spent thousands of our money on hotels with her affair partner. When I confronted her, she said, "I already gave you 17 years. Just be grateful." I just stared at her. That was 2 weeks ago. Yesterday, she sent letters apologizing to our children. I am the sole provider for my family of 6. My wife is a SAHM and hasn't worked since our eldest was born, by her own choice, and we've been together for 17 years. I wake up at 5 o'clock a.m. and take the dogs out, prepare kids' lunches/snacks, ensure all school essentials such as bags, etc. are at the front door, then head to work. Kids are picked up for daycare school at 7 o'clock. Due to after-school activities and clubs, etc., they're not home until 6 o'clock. My wife doesn't take anyone to their clubs/activities. I come home at 7 o'clock and make dinner most nights, help with homework, do bath time for the little ones, do dishes, take dogs out for longer walks again, and put little ones in bed. If the house is a mess, I will of course clean it. I pay for everything: mortgage, bills, insurance, groceries, clothes, toys, technology, after-school activities, dates, and a woman to deep clean the house once a month. With our household running smoothly, we've each found time to pursue personal interests beyond parenting duties. When she announced plans for a 2-week vacation overlapping with my rare visit to my brother, demanding I cancel my trip because she needed a break, we argued heatedly, and I refused to budge. Taking a sick day, I stayed home while the kids went to school. My wife appeared around noon, initially criticizing my absence from work before asking what she could do to help. After bringing water, she disappeared to take a phone call, then repeatedly insisted we go out despite my developing migraine. I declined her suggestions for shopping and nail appointments, attempting instead to discuss our relationship issues. She dressed up and left without locking the door, ignoring my requests to talk. Following advice I'd received, I terminated our cleaning service while she was gone, parting amicably with the cleaner. My wife returned at 8, demanding dinner, shocked when I told her to prepare something herself since the children and I had already eaten. She left again, returning with McDonald's only for herself, which upset our youngest, who wondered why mommy hadn't brought her ice cream. My wife blamed me, claiming I'd forbidden it, which took considerable restraint not to dispute in front of our daughter. That evening, I presented my concerns about our unequal household responsibilities. She listed laundry, feeding dogs, appointments, and grocery shopping as her contributions. I countered that I prepare the dogs' meals while she merely distributes them. I handle laundry folding and distribution, transport children to appointments, and put away groceries she orders through an app. Visibly shaking with rage, she retreated upstairs. When I followed, she was on the phone and ordered me to sleep on the couch. I refused and got into bed, prompting her to hang up and physically attempt dragging me out, resulting in a confrontation that ended with me on the couch to avoid waking the children. The following days brought similar tensions. I stopped handling her laundry while continuing to care for myself and the younger children, with the older ones managing their own. I cooked only for the kids, telling my wife to prepare her own meals. My eldest son, possibly aware of our conflicts, asked to walk the dogs with his friend during the week. He's been distant with his mother and repeatedly asked if I love him, which concerned me deeply. I've assured him nothing could change my love for him, though he's not ready to discuss what's troubling him. Thursday evening, knowing I'd leave Friday to visit my brother, my wife suggested we share a drink. I had one but felt immediately drowsy and wanted only to rest. I declined, feeling exhausted from the day's events. As we prepared for bed, the tension between us was palpable. I woke up Friday morning and my wife was gone, so was her suitcase. I've texted and called, but there's been no answer other than a text telling me we'd talk about it when she's back. She ignored me and went on her trip regardless, and I am furious. I have left her some cash in the bank account. She has the card too, but I've removed everything else into another account. I had to call my brother why I wouldn't be coming to see him, and he arrived here on Saturday with my nephew and 2 nieces. The house is very full, but honestly, it feels more open than it has in a long time. The kids seem relaxed, and so do the dogs. I don't know what will happen with my wife, but I am done. My brother Donald took one look at me Saturday morning and pulled me into a bear hug. I hadn't realized how much I needed that until I felt my shoulders shaking. He patted my back while his kids ran past us into the house, their excited voices filling the space my wife had left empty. "Uncle!" My youngest daughter launched herself at Donald's legs. He scooped her up, spinning her around while she giggled. My other kids emerged from various corners of the house, drawn by the commotion. Even my eldest son, who'd been holed up in his room since his mother left, came downstairs. Donald set my daughter down and surveyed the scene. "All right, troops, your dad needs some help getting this place shipshape. Who wants to earn some pizza money?" The kids cheered. Within minutes, Donald had them organized into teams with his own children. They scattered throughout the house, picking up toys, sorting laundry, and wiping down surfaces. I stood in the kitchen, watching the chaos unfold. The house hadn't felt this alive in months. My phone buzzed. Another text from my wife. "Hope you're enjoying babysitting duty. See you in 2 weeks." I deleted it without responding and shoved the phone in my pocket. Donald appeared beside me, grabbing 2 mugs from the cabinet. He knew where everything was. He'd helped us move in 8 years ago. "Coffee?" He didn't wait for an answer, just started the machine. "Kids seem good. They're adjusting." I rubbed my temples. The headache from Thursday hadn't fully gone away. My eldest keeps asking if I love him. Won't tell me why. Donald frowned. "That's concerning. Has he said anything else?" "No, just keeps his distance from where his mother usually sits. Won't even use her favorite mug." The coffee maker gurgled. Donald leaned against the counter counter, crossing his arms. You mentioned feeling drowsy Thursday night. After one drink? Yeah, knocked me out cold. Woke up and she was gone. His frown deepened. That's not normal. Before I could respond, my daughter ran in. Daddy, we found Mommy's papers in the trash. Should we keep them? My stomach dropped. What papers, sweetie? She held up a handful of crumpled documents. I recognized them immediately. Bank statements, insurance forms, even our mortgage paperwork, all torn from the filing cabinet in our bedroom. Donald took them from her gently. Good job finding these. Why don't you go help your cousins with the living room? She skipped off. Donald smoothed out the papers on the counter. Several had coffee stains. Others were ripped. My hands shook as I sorted through them. She tried to destroy our financial records. My voice came out hollow. Not tried. Succeeded with some. Donald held up half of our insurance policy. You have copies? Digital ones, yeah. I gathered the salvageable documents. Why would she do this? Donald's jaw tightened. Same reason she drugged you Thursday night. She's planning something. The word drugged hit me like a punch. I wanted to argue, to say my wife wouldn't do that, but the evidence stared back at me from the coffee-stained papers. My phone rang. The kid's school. My chest tightened as I answered. Mr. Johnson, this is Principal Martinez. I'm calling about your children's absences last week. Absences? I gripped the phone tighter. They were in school every day. Our records show your wife called them in sick Tuesday and Wednesday. She said they had a family emergency? The room spun slightly. No emergency. They were definitely at school. I packed their lunches those mornings. Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, Mr. Johnson, can you come in Monday? We need to discuss this discrepancy. Of course, I'll be there. I hung up and found Donald watching me. She called them in sick? Apparently. I slumped against the counter. But they went to school. The bus picked them up at 7 like always. So where did she tell the school they were? Donald's voice had an edge I rarely heard. Family emergency. I laughed bitterly. What emergency? I was at work. She was home doing what exactly? My eldest son appeared in the doorway. He looked between Donald and me, his expression guarded. Dad, is everything okay? Just some confusion with the school, buddy. Nothing to worry about. He didn't look convinced. Is it about Mom calling us in sick? My blood ran cold. You knew about that? He shifted uncomfortably. She made me promise not to tell. Said you'd get upset over nothing. Donald stepped forward. Hey, kiddo, why don't you show me your room? I brought that game you wanted to try. My son glanced at me. I nodded. They headed upstairs, leaving me alone with my thoughts and destroyed documents. I spent the next hour on the phone with our bank. Several unauthorized purchases had appeared on our joint account. Expensive jewelry, designer clothes, charges from hotels I'd never heard of, all from the past month. How had I missed this? The bank representative explained each charge patiently. A necklace for $800, shoes for $600, a spa day for $400. The total made my stomach churn. Can I dispute these charges? Since it's a joint account and your wife made them, that would be difficult. You could remove her from the account? Already in process. Can you freeze the card? Immediately. One small victory. I hung up and found Donald in the backyard with all the kids. They'd set up an obstacle course using lawn furniture and pool noodles. My youngest daughter rode on his shoulders, shrieking with laughter as he pretended to be a horse. The scene should have made me smile. Instead, I felt hollow. This was what our weekends should look like. Family, laughter, chaos. Not me discovering financial betrayal while my wife vacationed on money we didn't have. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your wife is staying with me. Thought you should know. Janet. My wife's best friend who lived across town. The one who always gave me cold looks at school events. I saved the number and typed back. Thanks for letting me know. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, she says you're abusive, that you control all the money and won't let her work. I stared at the screen. Abusive? I begged her to get a job for years. She refused, saying the kids needed her home. I never questioned it, just worked harder to cover our expenses. That's not true, I typed back. She's very convincing, has bruises on her arms. My hands shook. I hadn't touched my wife in anger ever. The only physical contact we'd had recently was when she tried dragging me off the bed. Donald appeared beside me. You okay? I showed him the texts. His face darkened. She's setting you up. For what? Custody battle. Divorce. Making herself the victim. He screenshot the conversation on my phone. Document everything. Every text, every call, every strange charge. You're going to need it. The kids ran past. My nephew chasing my daughter with a pool noodle. Their laughter felt distant, like it came from another world. A world where mothers didn't abandon their children and spread lies about their fathers. Uncle Donald, my eldest son called out. Can you help me with something? Donald squeezed my shoulder. Start a journal. Write down everything you remember from the past few months. Every fight, every strange behavior, every time something felt off. He jogged over to my son. I went inside and found a notebook. My hand cramped as I wrote, filling page after page with incidents I'd dismissed or ignored. The time she came home at 3 a.m. claiming she'd been at Janet's. The weekend she insisted I take the kids to my mother's so she could deep clean, but the house looked the same when we returned. The way she'd started locking her phone, changing passwords, closing laptop screens when I entered the room. How had I been so blind? The front door opened. Mr. Johnson? A woman's voice called out. I found our former cleaning lady, Maria, standing in the entryway with a box. I'm sorry to bother you. I found some things that belong to your wife. Thank you for bringing them. I took the box. I'm sorry again about ending the service. She waved dismissively. No apologies needed. But Mr. Johnson, she glanced around, then leaned closer. Your wife had me do extra tasks, things not in our agreement. What kind of tasks? Mailing packages, picking up items from strange addresses, always when you were at work. She pulled out her phone. I kept records for my own protection. Would you like copies? My mouth went dry. Yes, please. She sent several photos to my phone. Receipts for shipped packages, addresses I didn't recognize, photos of items she'd been asked to retrieve, mostly documents in small boxes. Maria, what was in the packages she had you mail? I never looked, but they were heavy, and she always paid me extra in cash to not mention them. After Maria left, I sat with the box she'd brought. Inside were more financial documents, some jewelry I didn't recognize, and a second cell phone. My hands trembled as I powered it on. Password protected, of course. Donald found me staring at it. Second phone? Apparently. He sat beside me. My offer stands. Stay with me for a while. Kids, too. We can't leave our home. You can't stay here alone with the kids while she's spreading lies about abuse. He gestured to the phone. She's been planning something for months. You need witnesses around you. My youngest daughter ran in. Daddy, I'm hungry. Normal. Routine. I could do that. What do you want for lunch, princess? Grilled cheese? Coming right up. I made lunch for 8 people. Assembly line style. The kids chatted and laughed. My brother's presence making everything feel almost normal. My eldest son even smiled when his cousin told a joke. After lunch, while the younger kids napped and the older ones played video games, Donald and I sorted through more evidence. The second phone taunted me from the coffee table. Try birthdays, Donald suggested. I entered various combinations. Nothing worked. Then, on a hunch, I tried the date she'd first mentioned wanting a vacation. The phone unlocked. My stomach dropped. Text after text filled the screen. Conversations with Janet about leaving me. Messages to a lawyer about custody arrangements. Photos of bruises I didn't cause. Screenshots of bank accounts I didn't know existed. Donald, my voice cracked. He read over my shoulder, his expression growing darker with each message. She's been planning this for 6 months minimum. One thread caught my eye. Messages to someone named Robert. Flirty texts. Meeting arrangements. Photos that made my chest tight. Who's Robert? Donald asked. I scrolled up. Found my answer. Her personal trainer. The one she insisted she needed for her mental health. The texts went back 8 months. Before she'd started acting strange. Before the locked phones and mysterious absences. This wasn't a reaction to our problems. This was the cause. My phone rang. My mother. Honey, I just got the strangest call from your wife. She says you kicked her out? That you're keeping the children from her? I put her on speaker. Mom, she left. Went on vacation after I refused to cancel visiting Donald. That's not what she told me. She's crying. Says you changed the locks and drained the bank accounts. Donald grabbed the phone. Mom, it's me. I'm here with him. She left Friday morning while he was asleep. Door was unlocked when I arrived Saturday. He moved money to protect it after she made unauthorized purchases. Silence. Then, why would she lie to me? We're trying to figure that out, I said. Mom, has she contacted you before about our marriage? A few times. Said you were controlling. That you wouldn't let her work or have friends. A pause. I defended you, but she was very convincing. My throat tightened. How many people had she told these lies to? How long had she been building this narrative? After I hung up, I sat in silence. Donald ordered pizza for dinner. The kids cheered when it arrived, acting like it was a special treat instead of a band-aid on a gaping wound. My eldest son sat beside me during dinner. Dad, are you and Mom getting divorced? The table went quiet. Even the younger kids paused mid-bite. I don't know, buddy. Maybe. Good. He went back to eating like he hadn't just shattered my heart. Donald's kids filled the silence with chatter about school and games. My children slowly joined in, but I caught them glancing at me throughout the meal. After dinner, while Donald supervised bath time for the younger kids, I called my credit card companies. 2 cards I didn't know about had been opened in my name. Both maxed out. Thousands in debt I didn't create. My hands shook as I disputed the charges and requested fraud investigations. The representative was kind, but clear. Proving I didn't open the accounts would be difficult. By the time all the kids were in bed, I felt hollow. Donald and I sat on the back porch, beers in hand, dogs at our feet. What do? I asked the darkness. You protect yourself and those kids. Document everything. Get a lawyer as soon as possible. He took a long drink. And you stop blaming yourself for not seeing it sooner. How did I miss this? 17 years, Donald. How do you hide this kind of betrayal for 17 years? You didn't miss it. You trusted your wife. That's what you're supposed to do. My phone lit up. Another text from Janet. She's filing for emergency custody Monday. Says you're unstable and the kids aren't safe. Thought you should have warning. I showed Donald. He immediately started typing on his phone. What are you doing? Texting our cousin, the lawyer. He owes me a favor. I can't afford. Yes, you can. Because you can't afford not to have representation when she files. He finished typing and looked at me. This is war now. She fired the first shot months ago. Time to defend yourself. I nodded, feeling something harden in my chest. My wife had left our children to vacation with her affair partner while spreading lies about me. She'd stolen money, destroyed documents, and built a false narrative of abuse. But she'd made one mistake. She'd left the kids with me. And I'd document every moment of care, every meal cooked, every homework session supervised, every bedtime story read. The stars looked cold above us. Somewhere out there, my wife was probably laughing with Robert, planning her next move in this sick game. I pulled out the notebook again and wrote, Day 2 without her. Kids are happy. House is peaceful. Brother here for support. She's telling lies to everyone who will listen. I'm done pretending this marriage isn't over. Tomorrow I'd face the school principal, call more banks, and try to untangle the web of lies she'd woven. But tonight, I sat with my brother on my back porch, my children safe in their beds, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Sunday morning arrived with my nephew jumping on my bed at 6:30. The normalcy of children's energy helped push away the dread settling in my stomach about Monday's meeting with Principal Martinez. Donald already had coffee brewing when I made it downstairs. The kids excited chat chatter filling spaces that had been silent for too long. My phone showed 17 missed calls from my wife. No voicemails, just the missed call notifications stacking up like accusations. I silenced it and focused on making pancakes for everyone. The simple act of feeding my family grounded me in a way I desperately needed. Around 9, my mother arrived unannounced. She took one look at the chaos of children and Donald organizing another backyard game and pulled me aside. Her face showed the confusion and concern I'd heard in her voice yesterday. She asked about the calls from my wife, the stories of abuse and control. I showed her the bank statements, the unauthorized purchases, the second phone with its damning messages. Her expression shifted from confusion to anger as she processed each piece of evidence. My eldest son watched from the doorway as I explained everything to my mother. When she hugged me, promising her support, I saw something shift in his expression. Relief, maybe, or validation that his instincts about his mother were correct. The day passed in a blur of documentation. Donald helped me create a timeline of events, cross-referencing bank statements with the texts on my wife's second phone. The pattern that emerged made my stomach turn. Every girls' night corresponded with hotel charges. Every emergency that required me to handle the kids alone matched up with meetings with Robert. My daughter asked why Mommy hadn't called to say goodnight. The question hung in the air until Donald's daughter distracted her with a puzzle. But I caught my eldest son's jaw tightening at his sister's innocent question. That evening, after the kids were asleep, I sat with Donald and my mother going through more evidence. My mother had brought her own documentation, emails my wife had sent her over the past year, each one painting me as increasingly controlling and unstable. The manipulation was masterful in its subtlety. Never outright lies, just careful implications and selective truths. She'd mentioned my long work hours, but not that they paid for her shopping sprees. She'd talked about feeling trapped, but not about refusing every suggestion that she returned to work. My phone buzzed, a text from my boss asking if I was feeling better and confirming I'd be back Monday. I realized my wife must have called my work when I took that sick day. Another thread to unravel, another lie to document. Donald's cousin, the lawyer, called around 10. The conversation was sobering. Emergency custody hearings moved fast. I needed to be prepared with evidence of my fitness as a parent and her abandonment. He walked me through what to gather, what to expect, and how to protect myself. After everyone left or went to bed, I sat alone in my kitchen with the notebook, adding more memories. The time she'd insisted the kids needed new tablets for educational purposes, but I'd found them still in boxes months later. The weekend trips to help her sick aunt, who I later learned had been healthy and surprised to hear she'd been used as an excuse. Monday morning came too fast. I woke at 4:30, my usual time, but my body felt heavier than normal. The dogs sensed my mood, staying close as I let them out and prepared for the day ahead. Donald was already up, making coffee and packing lunches. He'd extended his stay after yesterday's revelations, and I'd never been more grateful for family support. We worked in comfortable silence, the routine of morning preparation keeping my anxiety at bay. The kids woke one by one, my eldest son appearing first. He helped his younger siblings get ready without being asked, his maturity both impressive and heartbreaking. No 13-year-old should have to step up like this because his mother abandoned the family. At breakfast, I explained I had a meeting at school but didn't elaborate. The younger kids accepted this easily, but my eldest son's knowing look told me he understood more than I'd said. The school bus arrived on schedule. I watched my children board, their backpacks bouncing as they found seats. Normal kids heading to a normal day, despite the chaos swirling around them. Donald drove me to the school for my meeting with Principal Martinez. Having a witness seemed prudent given the accusations flying around. The secretary's sympathetic smile as she showed us to the principal's office made my stomach clench. How much did the school staff know? Principal Martinez, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, had my children's attendance records spread across her desk. The discrepancies were clear. 2 days marked absent that I knew they'd attended. I explained my confusion, showed her my work schedule proving I'd been gone those mornings after seeing the kids onto the bus. She nodded, making notes, her expression growing more concerned with each detail. She asked about my wife's whereabouts. I kept my answer simple. She was on a planned vacation. But when Martinez mentioned she'd tried calling my wife about the attendance issue and received no response, I saw an opportunity. I showed her the text saying my wife would be gone 2 weeks. Martinez's eyebrows rose slightly. A mother unreachable while her children's school tried to contact her about attendance problems didn't look good. The meeting ended with Martinez assuring me she'd investigate the discrepancy. She also mentioned, carefully, that the school counselor was available if my children needed support during this difficult time. The phrasing told me she understood more about our situation than I'd explicitly shared. Walking out, Donald clapped my shoulder. One hurdle cleared, but I knew more were coming. Back home, I found 3 certified letters waiting. My hands shook as I signed for them. The first was from a lawyer I didn't recognize, informing me that my wife had retained counsel. The second was from our joint credit card company about the fraudulent charges I'd reported. The third made my blood run cold. Child Protective Services had received a complaint about potential neglect and abuse in our home. A caseworker would visit within 48 hours to assess the situation. Donald read over my shoulder, his curse words creative and extensive. My wife had escalated beyond spreading rumors. She was trying to have our children taken away. I called the lawyer cousin immediately. He talked me through what to expect, what to prepare, and how to present myself. Document everything. Have witnesses present. Show proof of care and stability. Most importantly, remain calm no matter what accusations were made. The rest of Monday became a frantic preparation. I gathered medical records showing the kids' regular checkups and vaccinations, report cards demonstrating their academic success, photos from family events showing happy, well-cared-for children, every piece of evidence that I was a competent, loving father. My mother returned to help, bringing photo albums and her own documentation. She'd kept every school program, every handmade Father's Day card, every proud grandparent moment that showed my dedication to my children. Tuesday morning, I returned to work, leaving Donald at the house in case CPS arrived early. My boss pulled me aside, mentioning my wife had called last week claiming I was having a breakdown. He'd found it odd since my work performance had been stellar, but wanted to check in. I kept my explanation brief. Marital problems, separation in progress, false accusations being made. He nodded understanding, having gone through a difficult divorce himself. He assured me my job was secure and offered flexibility if I needed time for legal matters. The normalcy of work helped, but I couldn't stop checking my phone. Every unknown number could be CPS, the school, or another surprise my wife had orchestrated. Around noon, Donald texted. CPS had arrived. I left immediately, my supervisor's understanding nod following me out. The caseworker was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with a professional demeanor that gave away nothing. Donald had let her in, but waited for me to arrive before the formal interview began. She walked through our home, noting the cleanliness, the stocked refrigerator, the children's rooms with their homework neatly organized on desks. I showed her the chore charts, the meal plans, the calendar with everyone's activities clearly marked. Donald provided witness testimony about the weekend, how I'd maintained routine and care despite my wife's abandonment. My mother arrived partway through, adding her own observations about my parenting over the years. The caseworker asked about the bruises my wife claimed to have. I explained the only physical altercation, when she'd tried to drag me from our bed and I'd defended myself just enough to get away. Donald confirmed he'd seen no signs of violence, only a man trying to protect his children from their mother's erratic behavior. When asked about financial control, I produced bank statements showing the joint account my wife had access to, the bills I paid to maintain our household, and the unauthorized charges she'd made. The narrative of an abusive, controlling husband crumbled against the evidence of a provider trying to protect his family's resources from reckless spending. The interview lasted 2 hours. By the end, the caseworker's demeanor had shifted subtly. She couldn't say anything official, but her comment about conflicting reports that don't match the evidence gave me hope. After she left, I collapsed on the couch. Donald handed me a beer despite it being barely 3 in the afternoon. I needed it. The kids came home to find us reorganizing the living room, trying to burn off nervous energy. My eldest son took one look at my face and asked if everything was okay. I assured him it was, but his skeptical expression said he wasn't buying it. That evening, while helping with homework, my daughter mentioned mommy had called her tablet during school. My blood went cold. The kids weren't supposed to have their tablets at school, and my wife knew that. I checked the tablet's call history. 3 missed video calls during school hours. My wife was trying to contact the children directly, bypassing me entirely. Donald helped me adjust the tablet settings to block calls during school hours. We couldn't prevent all contact. That would look bad in a custody battle, but we could ensure it happened at appropriate times with supervision. Wednesday brought new challenges. My wife's friend Janet appeared at my door during my lunch break. I'd come home to grab documents for the lawyer and found her on my porch, looking uncomfortable but determined. She started with accusations, repeating the abuse allegations. I invited her in, partly to avoid a scene for the neighbors, and partly because I sensed something different about her approach. Inside, with Donald as witness, I showed Janet the same evidence I'd shown CPS, the bank statements, the second phone, the messages to Robert. Her expression changed with each revelation, confusion replacing certainty. When I showed her the texts between my wife and Robert going back 8 months, Janet's face went pale. She admitted my wife had been staying with Robert, not her. The lies extended even to her best friend. Janet left shaken, muttering about needing to reconsider things. I didn't expect her to become an ally, but maybe she'd stop being a weapon my wife could use against me. That afternoon, the school called. My eldest son had gotten into a fight, completely out of character for him. I left work early again, my boss's patience stretching thin despite his understanding. At the school, I found my son sitting outside the principal's office with a split lip and defiant expression. The other boy, someone I didn't recognize, had a black eye forming. Principal Martinez explained the fight had started when the other boy made comments about my son's mother abandoning her family for another man. My son had snapped, throwing the first punch. I sat with my son while the principal dealt with the other boy's parents. His tough facade crumbled as he admitted he'd been hearing whispers all week, kids repeating things they'd overheard from their parents. The small-town gossip mill had been working overtime. The principal, thankfully, showed understanding. Given the circumstances and my son's previously spotless record, he received a minimal suspension, just the rest of the day and Thursday. The other boy received the same, the principal noting that provocation had played a role. Driving home, my son finally opened up. He'd known about Robert for weeks, had seen texts pop up on his mother's phone when she'd asked him to bring it to her, had noticed her leaving for errands, dressed like like she was going on dates. The guilt in his voice as he admitted to keeping these secrets broke my heart. I assured him none of this was his fault, that protecting his mother's secrets wasn't his responsibility. He'd been put in an impossible position no child should face. At home, Donald had dinner ready. The normalcy of family meals had become our anchor in the chaos. My son apologized to his siblings for missing dinner due to detention, maintaining the cover story we'd agreed on to protect the younger kids from knowing about the fight. Thursday passed in a blur of legal preparations. The lawyer cousin had officially taken our case, working out a payment plan I could manage. We filed responses to my wife's emergency custody petition, using the CPS visit and school documentation to show I was the stable parent. My wife's accusations were numerous but vague: emotional abuse without specifics, financial control despite evidence of her access to money, neglect that somehow resulted in well-fed, high-achieving children. The lawyer seemed confident we could refute each claim. Friday morning, exactly 1 week since my wife had left, her return loomed like a storm cloud. The lawyer had advised me to change the locks, legally permissible since she'd abandoned the home, but to have her belongings packed and ready for pickup. I spent Thursday night after the kids were asleep sorting through her things with Donald's help. Each item carried memories of better times, before Robert, before the lies, before everything fell apart. We packed carefully, documenting everything with photos. Her jewelry, including pieces I now suspected were gifts from Robert. Her clothes, many with tags still on from shopping sprees I couldn't afford. Her personal documents, the ones she hadn't destroyed. My eldest son found us packing and silently began helping. We worked together, 3 generations of men trying to make sense of betrayal and preparing for whatever came next. By Friday afternoon, 23 boxes sat neatly labeled in the garage. A marriage reduced to cardboard and tape, waiting for pickup like any other unwanted items. The locksmith came while the kids were at school. New locks, new keys, a new reality where their mother needed permission to enter what had been her home. It felt wrong and necessary in equal measure. Around 4, my phone rang. My wife, finally breaking her silence beyond text messages. Her voice sounded different, harder. She demanded to know why her key didn't work. I explained calmly that she'd abandoned the home and her belongings were ready for pickup in the garage. The screaming started then. Threats of legal action, accusations of theft, claims I was traumatizing the children. I let her rant, the phone on speaker with Donald recording everything for evidence. When she paused for breath, I informed her about the CPS visit, the school's concerns about her unreachable status, and the fight our son had gotten into because of rumors about her affair. The silence that followed was deafening. She arrived an hour later with Robert and a rental truck. I stayed inside with the kids, Donald handling the garage access. Through the window, I watched the man who'd destroyed my marriage loading boxes while my wife supervised. My youngest daughter asked why Mommy was outside but not coming in. I explained Mommy needed to pick up some things but would see them soon. The lie tasted bitter but necessary. My eldest son stood beside me at the window, his expression unreadable as he watched his mother with another man. When she looked toward the house, he stepped back, unwilling to make eye contact. The loading took an hour. My wife tried twice to approach the house, but Donald firmly redirected her to the garage. The second time, she began screaming about her rights as a mother. Several neighbors came out to watch the spectacle. Finally, they left. My wife's last look at the house held pure venom. I knew this was far from over. That evening, exhausted from the emotional toll, I ordered pizza again. The kids seemed subdued, even the younger ones sensing the shift in our family dynamic. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, a photo of my wife and Robert at a restaurant, her wearing jewelry I'd never seen before. The message read, "Thought you should see who she really is. A concerned friend." I deleted it. I had enough evidence of her betrayal without anonymous contributions that felt more like salt in wounds than helpful information. Saturday marked 1 full week since Donald's arrival. He'd extended his stay again, his own family understanding the crisis nature of the situation. The kids had bonded with their cousins, finding joy despite the circumstances. We spent the morning at the park, all 8 of us, plus the dogs. The physical activity and fresh air helped clear my head. Watching my children play, hearing their laughter, reminded me what I was fighting for. My phone stayed silent most of the day. The calm felt ominous rather than peaceful. My wife was planning something. The Friday pickup had been too easy, too quiet after her initial outburst. Sunday brought the storm. I woke to pounding on the door at 7 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw 2 police officers. My heart raced as I opened the door, Donald appearing beside me. The officers explained they'd received a welfare check request. Someone had reported that I was unstable and the children were in danger. I invited them in, my hands steady despite my internal panic. They found a clean home, children eating breakfast in their pajamas, a normal Sunday morning scene. The officers seemed almost apologetic as they confirmed everyone was safe. One officer pulled me aside, mentioning this was the 3rd welfare check called in on my address this weekend. The previous 2 had found no one home as we'd been at the park and running errands. He suggested I might want to address whoever was making false reports. After they left, I sat at the kitchen table, head in my hands. My wife was escalating, using every system designed to protect children as weapons in her war against me. Donald made more coffee while my mother, who'd arrived during the police visit, distracted the kids with a baking project. My eldest son sat beside me, his quiet presence more comforting than any words. The lawyer called an hour later. My wife had filed additional motions claiming I was alienating the children from her. The irony of that accusation, given her 2-week abandonment, wasn't lost on anyone. We spent Sunday afternoon preparing for the custody hearing scheduled for Tuesday. Character references from neighbors who'd witnessed my daily care of the children. A letter from my boss about my stability and dedication. Documentation from the kids' teachers about their continued academic success, despite the family upheaval. My eldest son asked to write a letter to the judge. I was torn between protecting him from the legal process and respecting his autonomy. After discussing it with the lawyer, we agreed he could write it, but we'd decide later whether to submit it. That evening, I found him at his desk, writing carefully in his best handwriting. He wouldn't let me read it, saying it was private until he decided to share it. I respected his boundaries, proud of his maturity while mourning the innocence this situation had stolen. Monday arrived with another surprise. A process server delivered papers as I prepared to leave for work. My wife was suing for spousal support, claiming I'd left her destitute by freezing accounts and changing locks. The audacity was breathtaking. She'd drained thousands in unauthorized purchases, maintained access to a joint account, and was living with Robert, who presumably had his own income. Yet she painted herself as a victim of financial abuse. I forwarded everything to the lawyer and went to work, grateful for the distraction of physical labor. My co-workers, who'd noticed my stress, offered support without prying. The solidarity of people who worked hard for their families and understood betrayal's sting. That afternoon, the school called again. This time, it was good news. My daughter's teacher wanted me to know she'd been selected for the advanced reading program. Even amid chaos, my children were thriving. It was the first purely positive moment in 2 weeks. I arrived home to find Donald teaching all the kids to cook simple meals. My eldest son was showing his younger siblings how to make grilled cheese while Donald supervised. The self-sufficiency lesson wasn't lost on me, preparing them for whatever custody arrangement might come. My wife called during dinner. I let it go to voicemail, but her message was clear. She wanted to see the children immediately, accused me of kidnapping, and threatened to call the police again. I called the lawyer, who advised me to offer supervised visitation at a neutral location, document the offer, show willingness to facilitate relationship with their mother, but maintain boundaries for everyone's protection. I texted my wife the offer. Meet at the park Tuesday evening, after the custody hearing. I would stay nearby but give her space with the children. Her response was immediate and vitriolic, but she agreed. That night, I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow would bring the custody hearing, the first legal step in ending my marriage and determining my children's future. The weight of it pressed down like a physical force. I found Donald on the back porch at 3 a.m., unable to sleep either. We sat in silence, brothers bound by crisis and love. He'd put his own life on hold to support me, and I'd never be able to repay that debt. As dawn broke Tuesday morning, I felt the shift. 2 weeks since this began, and I was different, stronger in some ways, broken in others, but clear on one thing: my children deserved better than the chaos their mother had created. The house stirred to life with its new morning rhythm. Donald handling breakfast while I prepared for court. My mother arriving early to watch the younger kids. My eldest son, home from suspension, offering to help with his siblings. I put on my only suit, the one I'd worn to weddings and funerals. Today felt like both the death of a marriage and the beginning of something new. Donald drove me to the courthouse, my evidence organized in folders, character references, financial documents, proof of care and stability, weapons in a war I'd never wanted to fight. Outside the courthouse, I saw her, my wife, dressed impeccably, looking every inch the victim she claimed to be. Robert nowhere in sight. The lawyer had probably advised keeping him away from proceedings. Our eyes met across the parking lot. 17 years together, 4 children, a life built and destroyed. She looked through me like a stranger, and maybe that's what we'd become. I entered the courthouse with Donald beside me, ready to fight for my children, armed with truth against her lies. The security checkpoint, the echoing halls, the courtroom door, each step taking me further from the life I'd known and closer to whatever came next. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, with worn wooden benches and fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly ill. My lawyer, Donald's cousin Sebastian, met us at the defendant's table. He'd driven 3 hours to be here, working for a fraction of his usual rate. My wife sat across the aisle with her attorney, a sharp-dressed woman who looked like she ate men like me for breakfast. They whispered urgently, my wife gesturing dramatically with manicured nails I'd unknowingly paid for. The judge entered, an older man with tired eyes who'd probably seen 1,000 couples tear each other apart in this room. He reviewed the emergency custody petition while we all sat in tense silence. Sebastian had warned me not to react to anything my wife's lawyer said. Keep calm. Answer only what was asked. Let the evidence speak. But when her attorney stood and began painting me as an unstable, controlling abuser who'd locked a mother out of her home, my jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. They presented their case first. My wife took the stand, tears flowing as she described feeling trapped, controlled, isolated. She claimed I'd hidden money, refused to let her work, and turned the children against her during her brief absence for medical treatment at a beach resort with Robert. Her lawyer produced photos of bruises, testimony about my erratic behavior, and financial records showing I'd stolen marital assets. Each lie was delivered with such conviction, I almost believed them myself. Then came our turn. Sebastian methodically dismantled their narrative. Bank records showing her access to funds and unauthorized spending, the CPS CPS report finding no evidence of abuse or neglect. Principal Martinez's written statement about her unreachable status during school emergencies. I took the stand, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. I explained the daily routine I'd maintained for years, the care I'd provided while she pursued her interests. I kept emotion out of it, just facts and timelines. The judge asked about the children's current care. I described Donald's support, my mother's involvement, the stability we'd maintained despite the upheaval. When asked about my wife's abandonment, I simply stated she'd left for a planned vacation after I refused to cancel visiting my brother. My wife's attorney tried to twist everything. Why had I changed the locks? Safety concerns after she'd left the door unlocked and destroyed financial documents. Why move the money? To prevent further unauthorized purchases that were drowning us in debt. Why hadn't I tried to contact her during her trip? I had, repeatedly, with no response except a text saying we'd talk when she returned. The judge asked to see my phone. I handed it over, Sebastian having already marked the relevant messages. The string of unanswered calls and texts spoke louder than any testimony. Then Sebastian played his ace. The second phone, now legally obtained evidence, with its months of messages between my wife and Robert, planning the vacation, discussing how to hide assets, strategizing about custody. The courtroom fell silent as the judge read, his expression darkening. My wife's attorney objected, claiming the phone was illegally obtained. Sebastian countered that it was found in the marital home among items being packed at my wife's request. The judge allowed it. The final blow came from an unexpected source. Janet had submitted an affidavit, guilt apparently overwhelming her loyalty. She confirmed my wife had been staying with Robert, not her, and detailed conversations about getting everything in the divorce. The judge called a recess. In the hallway, my wife cornered me while our lawyers were distracted. "You've ruined everything," she hissed. "I already gave you 17 years. Just be grateful." I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I'd loved, who'd borne our children, who'd shared my bed and my life. Now a stranger filled with venom and greed. "You gave me lies," I said quietly. "I gave our family everything." She raised her hand as if to slap me. Donald stepped between us, his presence enough to make her lower it. Sebastian appeared, guiding me away while her attorney collected her. Back in court, the judge delivered his ruling. Temporary custody to me, with supervised visitation for my wife pending the full hearing. She'd been ordered to undergo evaluation given the evidence of deception and the false reports to various agencies. The financial matters would be addressed separately, but the joint accounts would remain frozen, except for necessary expenses approved by both parties. My wife's scream of rage echoed through the courtroom. The judge threatened contempt if she didn't control herself. Her attorney practically dragged her out, still ranting about injustice and stolen children. In the parking lot, I stood by Donald's truck, legs shaking now that adrenaline was fading. Sebastian shook my hand, promising to file the necessary paperwork for the visitation schedule. The first supervised visit would be Saturday at the courthouse family center. The drive home felt surreal. Donald kept glancing at me, probably worried I'd break down, but I felt empty, not relieved or victorious, just hollow. At home, my mother had the kids doing homework at the kitchen table. They looked up when we entered, my eldest son reading my face with that too adult perception he'd developed. "Everything okay, Dad?" "Yeah, buddy, everything's going to be okay." My youngest daughter ran over, wrapping her arms around my legs. "Is Mommy coming home?" The question I'd dreaded. I knelt down, looking into her innocent eyes. "Mommy's going to visit you on Saturday, but she's living somewhere else right now." "Why? How do you explain betrayal to a 6-year-old? Sometimes grown-ups need different things, but she still loves you, and you'll see her soon." The lie tasted necessary. Whatever my wife had become, these children didn't need to carry that burden. That evening, as promised, I took the kids to the park to meet their mother. The supervised visitation wouldn't start until Saturday, but I'd agreed to this brief meeting to show good faith. She arrived alone, dressed casually for once. The designer clothes and jewelry were gone, replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. For a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married. The younger kids ran to her, and she knelt to embrace them. My eldest son hung back, standing beside me with crossed arms. When she called to him, he shook his head. "I don't want to talk to you," he said firmly. Her face crumpled. "Baby, please, I'm your mother." Mothers don't abandon their families for their boyfriends. The words hung in the air like a slap. My wife looked at me as if I'd coached him, but this was all him, processing betrayal in his own way. She spent an hour with the younger three while my son and I sat on a bench nearby. He pulled out his phone, showing me a text from a classmate apologizing for the fight. The kids at school had apparently decided he'd been justified in defending his family's honor. When the hour ended, my wife approached us. "Can we talk privately?" I glanced at Donald, who'd been watching from his truck. He nodded. I followed her a few feet away, still within sight of everyone. "I want to come home," she said quietly. "I made a mistake. Robert, it's over. I see that now. 17 years of marriage, and she thought it could be fixed with an apology. It's too late for that. You're being cruel, punishing me for one mistake." "One mistake?" I pulled out my phone, showing her the bank statements. 8 months of hotel charges isn't one mistake. Calling CPS on me isn't one mistake. Destroying our financial documents isn't one mistake. She grabbed my arm. I was confused, overwhelmed. Being a stay-at-home mom is harder than you think. I removed her hand gently but firmly. I never thought it was easy. That's why I helped every morning and evening. That's why I paid for cleaning help. That's why I supported every activity you wanted to pursue. You controlled me. I begged you to get a job, to have your own money, your own life outside the house. You refused. Her mask slipped then, rage flashing in her eyes. I shouldn't have to work. You promised to take care of me. There it was, the truth beneath all the lies. She'd seen marriage as a meal ticket, not a partnership. I did take care of you and our children while you were taking care of Robert. She raised her hand again. This time I didn't flinch, just stared at her until she lowered it. Saturday, Courthouse Family Center, 2 hours supervised. Don't be late. I walked away, collecting my children. My eldest son took my hand, a gesture he'd outgrown years ago. The younger ones waved goodbye to their mother, already chattering about dinner plans. Wednesday morning brought new challenges. My boss called me into his office, explaining that my wife had contacted corporate HR with allegations of domestic violence. He'd defended me, but I needed to provide documentation to protect my job. I spent lunch break at the courthouse, getting certified copies of the custody ruling and CPS report. HR accepted them with professional sympathy, assuring me my position was secure. But the stress of defending myself at work while maintaining normalcy for the kids was wearing me down. That afternoon, Robert appeared at my door. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with the build of someone who spent too much time at the gym. He stood on my porch, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. We need to talk, he said. Donald appeared behind me before I could respond. No, you need to leave. Please, 5 minutes. There are things you need to know. Against my better judgment, I stepped onto the porch, Donald beside me. Robert backed up, maintaining distance. She told me you were separated, that the divorce was almost final. I didn't know. He pulled out his phone, showing me messages. She said you were abusive, that she was scared. I thought I was helping her escape. I scrolled through their conversations. My wife had painted herself as a victim trapped in a loveless marriage, afraid for her safety. The same lies she'd told everyone else. When did you figure out the truth? Friday, when she showed up with all those boxes, ranting about lawyers and custody. The story didn't match what she'd told me. He took his phone back. I ended it, told her to leave. She didn't take it well. Part of me wanted to rage at this man who'd destroyed my marriage. But looking at him, I saw another victim of her manipulation. Younger, naive, believing he was saving a damsel in distress. Stay away from my family, I said simply. And if you have any documentation of her lies, my lawyer would appreciate copies. He nodded, sending several screenshots to the number I provided. Then he left, shoulders slumped, probably questioning everything about the past 8 months. Donald whistled low. She played everyone. Yeah, I watched Robert's car disappear. Everyone. Thursday passed in a blur of normalcy. Work, school, homework, dinner. The routine felt like armor against the chaos. My eldest son had started talking more, processing his anger through questions about why people lie and whether love can turn to hate. I answered as honestly as I could while protecting his innocence. Yes, people lie for selfish reasons. Yes, love can sour when trust breaks. But no, it wasn't his fault. And no, he didn't have to choose sides. Friday afternoon, the school counselor called. She'd been meeting with my younger children, who'd requested to talk to someone about their mommy living somewhere else. Normal processing, she assured me, but she wanted me aware. My daughter had drawn pictures of our family. In older ones, 5 figures stood together. In the newest, 4 figures clustered while one stood apart, surrounded by dark scribbles. Child psychology at its most heartbreaking. That evening, I found my eldest son in the garage, going through the boxes we'd packed of his mother's things that she'd left behind in her haste. What are you looking for? He held up a photo album, pictures of when we were happy, to remind myself it wasn't always fake. We sat on the garage floor, flipping through years of Christmas mornings, birthday parties, family vacations. In every photo, we looked like the perfect family. Had any of it been real? The love for you kids was real, I said, believing it despite everything. Whatever else was lies, she loves you. Then why did she leave? The question every abandoned child asks. Because sometimes adults make selfish choices. It's not about you, it's about her. He leaned against my shoulder, this boy trying so hard to be a man. I'm glad you stayed. Saturday's supervised visitation arrived too quickly. I dressed the younger kids in their favorite outfits. My wife had always cared too much about appearances, and maybe familiar clothes would ease the awkwardness. The courthouse family center looked like a sad daycare, with toys and books trying to mask the reality of broken families. A social worker greeted us, explaining the rules to the children in gentle terms. My wife arrived 10 minutes late, dressed to impress but unable to hide the shadows under her eyes. She'd lost weight, her clothes hanging loose where they'd once fit perfectly. The younger children ran to her while my eldest son hung back again. The social worker encouraged him to at least say hello. He managed a stiff greeting before retreating to a corner with a book. I waited in a separate room with other parents in similar situations. Donald had offered to come, but I declined. This was something I needed to face alone. Through the observation window, I watched my wife try to reconnect with our children. The younger ones chattered about school and friends, while she nodded absently, her eyes constantly flicking to our eldest son. Halfway through the visit, she convinced him to join a board game. They played in tense silence. Her attempts at conversation met with monosyllabic responses. When she reached out to touch his hand, he pulled away. The social worker intervened when my wife started crying, the younger children looking confused and upset. Professional comfort was offered, the visit redirected to calmer activities. When 2 hours ended, my children filed out with mixed emotions. The younger ones clutched drawings they'd made with mommy, while my eldest son looked drained. My wife caught my arm as we left. This is cruel. Supervised visits like I'm some kind of criminal. It's temporary. Follow the court's requirements and it can change. I want the come overnight, next weekend. That's not my decision. Talk to your lawyer. She glanced at our eldest son, who was already at the car. He hates me. He's hurt. It takes time. Time I don't have. You're turning them against me. The social worker appeared, gently suggesting we continue this discussion through our attorneys. My wife stormed off, her heels clicking angrily on the pavement. At home, the kids scattered to process the visit in their own ways. My youngest daughter hung her drawing on the refrigerator, a rainbow with "I love mommy" in shaky letters. My eldest son went to his room, music soon pounding through the walls. Donald arrived for dinner, his presence lifting the mood. He'd brought a new board game, something silly about ninja cats that had everyone laughing within minutes. Normal felt like a gift we were slowly learning to unwrap again. Sunday morning, I woke to find my eldest son making breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, even coffee brewing. He'd set the table for 5, Donald included. "What's this about?" He shrugged, flipping eggs with surprising skill. "Figured you could use a break. Plus, I need to practice. In case this becomes permanent. In case he needs to help more. In case his childhood ends even more abruptly than it already had." "Thank you," I said simply. "But you know this isn't your responsibility, right?" "I know. I want to help." The rest of the family trickled down, drawn by the smell of breakfast. My youngest daughter clapped excitedly at the spread, praising her big brother's cooking. Even Donald looked impressed. We ate together, talking about everything except yesterday's visit. Plans for the week, a science project due Wednesday, the dogs needing vet appointments, normal life asserting itself despite the shadow of change. After breakfast, while the kids played outside, I sat with Donald reviewing finances. The lawyer had recommended separating everything immediately, protecting what remained of our assets. The damage was worse than I'd thought. Credit cards I didn't know existed, loans taken against our equity, savings drained, years of careful budgeting destroyed in months of secret spending. "You'll recover," Donald assured me. "It'll take time, but you'll rebuild." Time. Everything came back to time. Monday arrived with another surprise. A letter from my wife's attorney proposing a settlement. Generous by some standards. She'd take her personal belongings, 1 car, and a modest monthly support payment. In exchange, she'd drop all claims to the house and accept the current custody arrangement. Sebastian called within an hour of the letter arriving. "It's not terrible," he admitted, "but I think we can do better. She's scared. The evidence we have could destroy her in court. I don't want to destroy her. I just want to protect my kids." Then we negotiate, but from a position of strength. We spent an hour strategizing. Push for supervised visits to continue longer. Reduce the support payment given her deliberate financial sabotage. Ensure she couldn't make claims on my retirement or future earnings. The kids came home to find me buried in legal documents. My eldest son started dinner without being asked, recruiting his siblings to help. I watched them work together, a team forged by necessity. That evening, my phone rang. My wife, despite the no-contact order except through attorneys. "Please," she said before I could hang up. "Just listen." I should have ended the call, but something in her voice, a rawness I'd never heard, made me pause. "I know I ruined everything. I know you hate me, but those are my babies. Please don't take them from me completely." "I'm not taking them. You left them." I was confused. Robert made promises, said things that made sense when I was unhappy. I thought I deserved more. You did deserve more. We both did. That's why I begged you to talk to me, to work on us. You chose to lie instead. Silence. Then, quietly, "I know. I'm getting help. Therapy. Trying to understand why I did this. Too little. Too late. But if she was actually getting help, maybe she could eventually be a better mother to our children. Follow the court orders. Do what they require. That's all I can offer. I love them. Whatever you think of me, I love our children. Then prove it. Show up. Be consistent. Get healthy. They need a mother, not a victim." I hung up before she could respond. My eldest son stood in the doorway, having heard at least part of the conversation. "Was that Mom?" "Yeah." "Is she really getting help?" "She says she is." He considered this. "Good. Maybe she'll stop being so selfish." The blunt assessment of a 13-year-old who'd seen too much. I pulled him into a hug, feeling him resist briefly before relaxing into it. Tuesday morning brought normalcy and new challenges in equal measure. The kids got off to school without incident. Donald headed home to tend to his own neglected life, and I went to work trying to pretend my world hadn't imploded. My coworker, Catherine, who'd gone through her own messy divorce years ago, brought me coffee during break. We'd never been particularly close, but crisis had a way of creating unexpected bonds. She shared her own story, husband's gambling addiction, financial ruin, custody battles that left her daughter anxious for years, but also recovery, rebuilding, and eventually finding peace. "The first year is hell," she said bluntly. "The second is better. By the third, you'll wonder why you waited so long to leave." I wanted to protest that I hadn't left, that my wife had abandoned us, but the truth was more complex. We'd been leaving each other for years, just too stubborn or scared to admit it. That afternoon, Principal Martinez called with good news. My daughter's reading scores had jumped significantly, and they wanted to move her up to advanced placement permanently. Even through chaos, my children were thriving. I arrived home to find a package on the porch. No return address, but I recognized my wife's handwriting. Inside were letters for each child and a flash drive labeled "For the Kids." I read each letter carefully before deciding whether to share them. Apologies, expressions of love, promises to do better, age-appropriate and free of manipulation. Small progress. The flash drive contained hundreds of photos I'd never seen. My wife with the children at parks, museums, activities I'd been working during. Evidence that despite everything, there had been good moments I'd missed. I called Sebastian about the letters. He advised letting the children read them but keeping keeping copies for documentation. Everything was evidence now, even genuine attempts at connection. My eldest son read his letter in private, emerging with red eyes but saying nothing. The younger ones needed help with some words, their mother's cursive challenging their reading skills. My youngest daughter asked if she could write back. Of course, I said, finding paper and crayons. We'll give it to Mommy on Saturday. Wednesday passed quietly. Work, school, homework, dinner. The rhythm of single parenthood settling into my bones. I'd always done most of this, but now the weight felt different. No one to complain to about tough days. No one to share small victories, but also no one to criticize my parenting choices. No one to undermine routines with spontaneous shopping trips. No one to create chaos just to feel important. Thursday brought the final custody hearing. Less dramatic than the emergency session, more procedural. Both lawyers had reached agreements on most points. My wife attended, subdued and professional. The judge reviewed the psychological evaluation she'd undergone. No major disorders, but clear narcissistic tendencies and difficulty accepting responsibility. Therapy was mandated along with parenting classes. Custody remained primarily with me. Supervised visits would continue for 3 months, then gradually increase if she showed stability. Child support was waived given the financial damage she'd caused. Spousal support was set at a minimal amount for 1 year. The divorce itself would be finalized in 6 months, assuming no major incidents. Property division was straightforward. I kept the house and assumed its debt. She kept her car and personal belongings. My wife signed everything without protest. When the judge finalized the temporary orders, she looked at me across the courtroom, not with anger or hatred, but something like resignation. Outside, she approached while our lawyers talked. I know you don't believe me, but I am trying to change. I hope that's true, for the kids' sake, for my sake too. I don't like who I became. There was nothing to say to that. We stood awkwardly until Sebastian called me over to sign papers. See you Saturday, she said quietly, walking to her car alone. I watched her drive away, this woman who'd shared my bed for 17 years. Somewhere between the young girl I'd married and the stranger she'd become was the mother of my children. Maybe therapy would help her find that person again. Friday felt like a celebration of survival. 2 weeks since everything exploded, and we were still standing, broken in places, held together with determination and Donald's pizza nights, but standing. My eldest son asked if Uncle Donald could visit again soon. The bond they'd formed during crisis had become something special. I called my brother, who promised to come for Sunday dinner. That evening, we had our first family movie night since the separation. Microwave popcorn, animated comedy, and pile of kids and dogs on the couch. My youngest daughter fell asleep on my lap, her breathing steady and peaceful. My phone buzzed with a text from Janet. She'd heard about the custody ruling and wanted to apologize again for her part in the deception. I thanked her for eventually telling the truth, but didn't invite renewed friendship. Some bridges were better left burned. Saturday's visit went smoother. My wife had brought activities planned around each child's interests. Even my eldest son participated more, though still maintaining emotional distance. The social worker noted improvement in everyone's interactions, small steps toward whatever new normal would eventually emerge. That night, I sat on the back porch despite the cooling weather. The stars looked different now, less cold and distant. My phone sat silent beside me, no crisis texts or angry calls. Inside, my children slept safely. Tomorrow would bring Donald for dinner, homework to supervise, and dogs to walk. Monday would mean work and school, and continuing to rebuild. But tonight, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not happiness exactly, but possibility. The chance to build something better from the rubble of what we'd lost. My eldest son joined me on the porch, bringing a blanket. We sat in comfortable silence, two men learning to navigate a world forever changed. Dad, are you okay? I considered the question. Was I okay? My marriage was over, finances were wrecked, and my children were processing trauma no kid should face. But we were together. We were surviving. Yeah, buddy, I think I am. And for the first time in 17 years, I meant it.